You know, the sign on the cross is probably one of the most famous images in all of human history. But what if the story we all think we know is actually a cover for something much deeper? A hidden code preserved for 2,000 years that revealed a secret so shocking it sent the most powerful men in Jerusalem into an absolute panic. So let's go back. Picture it. Jerusalem, 2 millennia ago. A sign is hammered onto a cross above a condemned man. And the city's religious leaders, they completely lose it. They are terrified. So the question is, what on earth did Pontius Pilate write on that plaque? When they rushed to him, begging, demanding he change the inscription, Pilate's response was just ice cold and final. What I have written, I have written. Now, his refusal just makes the mystery even deeper, right? This wasn't just some Roman governor being stubborn. He was digging his heels in about something.
To really get why, we have to look at an actual piece of evidence that might have survived from that very day. Let's dig into this terrifying inscription.
This is the Titulus Crucis. It literally means title of the cross. And what you're looking at is believed to be a fragment of the actual, original wooden plaque from the crucifixion. Today, it's preserved in a basilica in Rome. I mean, just think about that. So many artifacts from that time are long gone, but this one somehow survived.
But here's where it gets really strange. If you look closely at this relic, you find something that just doesn't make any sense at first. Let's talk about the backward writing mystery.
Okay, so look at this. On the relic, the Greek and the Latin lines are written from right to left. That's completely backward for those languages. Now, the Hebrew is correct, right to left. So why the mistake? Well, the most likely theory is just a fascinating little human error. The scribe was probably a local, so used to writing in Hebrew his whole life, that when it came time to write the Greek and Latin, his brain just defaulted. He wrote them backward too. And this is a huge point, because this strange mistake is actually one of the best arguments for its authenticity. I mean, think about it. If you were a medieval forger trying to create a convincing fake, would you ever think to add such a weird, counterintuitive detail? No way. This kind of slip-up feels real. It feels rushed. It's like a historical fingerprint left at the scene. But that backward writing, that's just the first clue. It's the breadcrumb trail that leads us to the real secret, the thing that truly terrified the priests. And it has to do with God's forbidden name. So, most of us have seen these 4 letters on crucifixes, right? INRI, and we know it's a Latin acronym that stands for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. But here's the thing, that's just a shorthand. It's a kind of abbreviation that became popular in Christian art centuries later. The original sign was written out in full.
And this is where it all clicks into place. The Gospel of John tells us that Pilate wrote the full title in Hebrew. That phrase is Yeshua Hanazari Wamalek Haidum. Now watch what happens. If you take the first letter of each of those Hebrew words, you get Yod, He, Wa, and He. You get YHWH, YHWH, the Tetragrammaton, the sacred 4-letter unpronounceable name of God himself.
And that was their true fear. They weren't just upset about a political title, calling him a king. No, they were utterly horrified because Pilate, whether he knew what he was doing or not, had just placed the sacred name of God, the name so holy only the high priest could say it once a year in the temple's most sacred place, right above the head of a man they condemned as a blasphemer. The cross had suddenly become an altar.
So, you have to be asking, how in the world did this piece of wood survive all this time? Well, let's take a quick look at the relic's very controversial journey.
Okay, so the story goes that around 325 AD, Saint Helena, who was the mother of the Roman Emperor Constantine, found it during a trip to Jerusalem. She brought a piece of it back to Rome, where it was kept safe in a new church. And then, it pretty much disappeared. It was sealed up inside a wall and forgotten for over 1,000 years, until, get this, it was rediscovered completely by accident during some church renovations in 1492.
Of course, a relic this important has been put under the microscope. So what does the science say? Well, on the pro-authenticity side, experts point out the style of the letters is a perfect match for the 1st century. The wood itself is Mediterranean walnut, which fits the location. And of course, you've got that super weird backward writing. But on the other side, a carbon-14 test in the early 2000s dated it to the Middle Ages. Now that sounds like a deal breaker, but many scholars argue that result could be seriously flawed by centuries of contamination from things like candle smoke, incense, and even just being handled. The debate is still very much alive.
So whether you think the relic is the real deal or not, let's set that aside for a second. Because the message on that sign carries a huge amount of weight. In a way, you could see it as the very first written gospel.
Think about the languages Pilate chose. It wasn't random. He used Hebrew, the language of God and faith. He used Latin, the language of the Roman Empire, of law and military power. And he used Greek, which was the universal language of culture, philosophy, and ideas. Together, those three languages basically represented the entire known world at the time.
So on that one single piece of wood, a message was being broadcast simultaneously to everyone. It was a proclamation for the faithful, for the powerful, and for the thinkers. It was nailed up there for thousands of pilgrims from every corner of the empire to see, read in their own language, and then carry that story back home with them.
Which brings us right back to the beginning. What exactly was this sign? Was it just a final, cynical insult from a Roman governor who was fed up with the whole situation? Was it a bizarre historical accident, a strange linguistic quirk from a local scribe? Or, as many believe, was it something more? A deliberate, divine signature, hidden in plain sight, placed at the absolute turning point of human history. In the end, all we have are Pilate's words, "What I have written, I have written."